start recording.
Recording in progress.
All right. And then got one more small detail here. Just click, click, click.
Just so you know, Ryan, we are live now.
Perfect. Awesome. All right, let's get started. All right, we're admitting everyone from the waiting room and kicking things off. Hey, Jillian.
Hi.
How's it going?
How's it going, Ryan?
Yeah, thanks for running the live stream component. It's really cool how you have it all integrated. Hey, welcome everybody who's arriving for this evening's event, Safeguard Our Backyards, joining the campaign for health-based protective buffers from fracking. Hey, I'm Ryan. Folks are still coming in from the waiting room, so we'll be starting in just a moment. So as you're getting settled in, I invite you to share in the chat where you're tuning in from. Just say hi to all of our speakers, presenters, everybody else who's here. You can turn your video on or off. It's totally up to you. It's always nice to see people, especially at the beginning. One thing that you can do actually that's fun is you can go into gallery mode and just wave hello at everyone who's here. So I'm going to go into gallery mode right now just to see. Got all this. Folks, if you stretch the presentation, you can actually move it over and see everybody. So, hey. Hey, friends. Hey, John, Michelle, Alice, Lisa, Taylor, Cosetta's here. Ryan's here. David Hess, Ramona, Mountain Watershed Association, Irene, Steve, welcome. It's so good to see folks. And folks are saying hi in the chat as well. All right, so we are recording and live streaming, so you'll be able to follow up with this and share the presentation with others. We're going to ask that everyone keep your microphone off and use the chat for questions or chatter. Cameos, welcome. Some of us have children around the house. All right, more people are coming in, so we're just continuing with all the welcomes. It's so fantastic to see such a crowd forming tonight. Wow. Okay. All right, hey Gunnar and Vicky. All right, hey, Justin Noble's here. Welcome, Justin. Hello, Kat. Wow, yeah, so many people are coming in. We can't even kick it off because we're busy pressing the admit button here. All right, so let's get things started. Just real quick, again, my name's Ryan. I'm honored to be doing the technical hosting today. Welcome. We're recording, and we're about to get started here as everybody's getting in. And right. So I'm going to turn this over to our amazing moderator today. Hey, Alice, how's it going?
Hey, Ryan. Hi, everyone.
Hey, yeah, let's get things started. So everybody's here? All right, go Alice.
Wonderful. It's so great to see everyone. Thank you all for spending your Wednesday evening with us to learn about our campaign for health-based protective buffers from fracking. My name is Alice Liu. I'm the policy analyst at Clean Air Council, and as Ryan said, I'll be moderating today's conversation. So a little bit before we get started about Protective Buffers PA, we are a coalition of environmental and public health organizations working in Pennsylvania. So this includes partners like Environmental Integrity Project, Protect PT, Environmental Health Project, Physicians for Social Responsibility Pennsylvania, Clean Air Council, and Earthworks. Now I will turn it over to our wonderful panelists to give a brief introduction. I'll start with Michelle, and then we can just, go from there in speaker order.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. Michelle Stonemark. I live in Cecil, Pennsylvania, which is in Washington County. We have a lot of oil and gas operations around here, and I am currently a little over 500 feet from the Augustine well pad, which my family and I have been experiencing the side effects from for the last 5+ years. So I'll be speaking a little bit about my experience today, and on to Jillian, I guess.
Thanks, Michelle. Hi, Jillian Graber, Executive Director of Protect PT, Penn Trafford. I'm in Westmoreland County, Pennsylvania, about 45 minutes east of Pittsburgh. And right now I'm sitting right over the hill from a proposed well pad. It's been proposed for 10 years, about 2,000 feet from my home, and about a mile from 5,000 other homes. So lots of people in this densely populated area of Penn Trafford. And Lisa, you're next.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lisa Hallowell. I'm a senior attorney with the Environmental Integrity Project. I'm based outside of Philadelphia. I'm licensed to practice law in Pennsylvania. I'm one of the attorneys who filed the petition for rulemaking that we'll be talking about. Have been working on oil and gas issues in Pennsylvania for many years with some of these other speakers here today. And I will turn it to Taylor.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Taylor Musil with the Environmental Health Project. I am the field manager at our nonprofit that's been around since around 2012. And so my role is focusing on coordinating all of our community engagement efforts across the Appalachia and Northeast regions of the United States. As an organization, the conversation tonight is really at the heart of what we focus on and what we care about, which is health. And, you know, for many years, there have been residents that you'll hear from tonight and many others that have talked about the impacts of this industry on their health. And we're going to talk tonight, and I'm interested in sharing the health evidence behind the recommendations that we've put forward as a coalition, and I will pass it over to Lois.
Good evening, everyone. So happy you're here. My name is Lois Bauer Bjornson. I'm the Southwestern Pennsylvania field organizer with Clean Air Council, and I host Frackland Tours. I live 40 minutes south of Pittsburgh in Washington County, the most heavily fracked county in our state. Our home is completely encompassed by oil and gas activities, compressor stations, pipelines, well pads, and endless truck traffic going past our house. I got involved in this work about 10 years ago, moved back to the area and thought, what is going on? So I'm here today to share just some insight as to what's happening in Washington County and other counties as well, and how I began my work. So I'll pass that on to Lisa next.
Hi, everybody, and thanks again for joining us. My name's Lisa Graves Marcusi, and I'm a lifelong resident of the Mon Valley here in Western Pennsylvania, and I work with the Environmental Integrity Project as the Pennsylvania Coordinator of Community Outreach. I have had the great pleasure of working with a lot of these folks here tonight and in the shale field communities, and they've become friends and extended family members to me, so I truly care about what happens in their communities. So we really appreciate everybody tuning in, because not only are we going to talk about how we got here, but my portion of the presentation is what do we do next? And we're going to have some really important action items that we're hoping you'll join us in urging the governor to make this change to protect our health here in the Commonwealth.
Wonderful. Thank you all. And as a reminder, I'm Alice Liu. I am the policy analyst at Clean Air Council, and I'm based in Philadelphia. So we have a pretty packed agenda tonight. You've heard a little bit from our speakers already about what they'll be discussing. So I'll pull this up as the agenda for what we're talking about tonight, but I won't keep it up for too long. And I will actually just pass it on to Michelle to hear about her resident story.
Thank you so much. Like I said in my self-introduction, I live in Cecil Township, which is in Washington County, Pennsylvania. And like Lois said, it's one of the most it is the most densely packed oil and gas county in the state. I live, and you can see in the first picture here, my home is in the bottom right corner. I am 523 feet from the well pad. That pad was built it was approved in our township in 2017. I fought it. When I found out that it was going in, my family and we all live on a big extended piece of property, a compound, we like to call it, just jokingly, but it's just one large piece of property. And my family and I all went in together and tried to stop the well pad from happening. Our issue was that the ordinance in Cecil Township was designed way back in 2009. They had, the supervisors at the time worked with Range Resources and other industry members, and they based the ordinance solely off of industry opinions and state minimum setbacks. That is how we ended up with the 500-foot setback in Cecil Township. When the Augustine pad was introduced and my family and I went in to fight it, we lost. We appealed that decision to the Court of Common Pleas, and we lost there as well. I knew then that there wasn't a whole lot more I could do from a legal standpoint, because what was in place in Cecil Township was what was making it allowed for them to do this so close to my home. You can see in the second picture in the middle here that right behind me, sort of on the other side of the pad, is a neighborhood of approximately 250 homes. And the closest home to that is 830 feet away. These residents down in that neighborhood, along with myself, started to experience different side effects or consequences of them drilling beginning in when they began production in 2020. At that time, we were mostly stuck in the house because of the COVID pandemic. So we were under lockdown. At that time, Range Resources decided to use what they called their green fleet, and they were doing an air monitoring study while utilizing their green fleet. During the horizontal and vertical drillings, we had so much noise, so much air pollution. Sometimes we couldn't go outside because of how bad it smelled. Now, being stuck in our homes with nowhere to go during the pandemic, you can imagine this was super frustrating for us. So to be stuck inside, not even be able to go outside because of how bad the smells were outside. Some other things that happened to us during that time were nosebleeds, headaches, and a lot of nausea. We didn't experience too many side effects from, which I like to talk about. I'll talk a little bit about my home, just because we started to experience a little bit of vibrations in our home as well. But I'll get more to that when I talk a little bit later here. So after the initial drilling of 4 wells, they left, and I'd like to say it was peaceful, but it wasn't, because even though they weren't here anymore, we still had constant truck traffic. We still had constant noises. We still had loud bangs in the middle of the night that would wake us up. We had so many sleepless nights through that first round of drilling. In 2023, they decided to come back and drill 4 more wells. And this time they did not bring their green fleet. They brought what I assume to be their normal fleet. At the time, during horizontal and vertical drilling, our house actually vibrated so bad that the pictures on our walls would shake, that water in a glass on the table, you could see the movement in the water in the glass on the table. There were sections of our home that we couldn't even go into because we could feel it in our chest and on our heads. We would literally feel the pounding in our heads. Now, what happened with us when we complained about it, Range Resources would bring out some noise monitors and they'd say, well, we're in compliance with your ordinance. And they were, because our ordinance, like I said, was developed back in 2009 and was developed with help from the industry. And they only allowed for the measurement of dBAs, which are regular noises, like you're hearing my voice right now. It's a dBA. The noises that we were hearing were low frequency noises. And I always tell people that they're called DBCs. And I always tell people to explain it. Imagine you're in your car and the car next to you pulls up right next to you and its bass is really thumping in its car. You can feel it in your car. You can feel it in your car. You can feel it in your body. Your change is rattling in your cup holder. Those are DBCs. And the way that Range was getting around the ordinance was that they weren't making a lot of dBA noise, which was the noise that you're hearing now. They were making a lot of the DBC noises. And those were the ones that were low, that the monitors couldn't pick up, and that were shaking and vibrating our home. So during that time, all of our symptoms worsened. Everybody, the kids all had nosebleeds. My one daughter had, I'm hesitant to discuss the majority of it because she is 18 now and I don't want to speak on her behalf, but she had a lot of anxiety and a lot of mental problems that accustomed to this, and she attributed most of it to the vibrations in the house. It would make her feel like she was coming out of her skin, and she felt like she wasn't herself and that bugs were crawling on her. She just had a lot of different issues that she had to deal with that were in a mental capacity. But alongside, again, we were having sleepless nights. We were having nosebleeds. We were having headaches. We were having nausea. None of us got a decent night's sleep for months while they came back and drilled these second 5 wells. It was at that time that I also had several range employees come out to my house. I had several of the Cecil Township supervisors come out to my house so that they could experience it for themselves. And I really started advocating for an updated ordinance. And I explained to them, this is happening because you had no other choice. You had this ordinance in place, all these rules were in place, and now I'm suffering the consequences of those rules and things that you had in place. So I really started advocating a lot for a change of the Cecil Township ordinance. Finally, with the supervisors coming out to my home and experienced it themselves, they kind of got on board. So they decided to hold meetings for a new updated ordinance. We had several hearings over the course of several months. At this point, there were maps that were drawn by the township that they proposed where, a new well pad could be. And anytime a new well pad, a location where it could go was proposed, hundreds of residents would come out and say, no, we don't want it here either. We don't want it here either. And something that I didn't experience back in 2017 when the well pad was proposed was any type of support from any resident other than my family in this township. I had no support. And suddenly here I am trying to update the ordinance all these years later, and hundreds of residents are coming out in support of updating this ordinance. So the supervisors, they kept making revisions to it. And finally they decided, they met with Range Resources and they said, hey, look, where do you guys want to go? Where do you want, what can we work with us here? We know you want to drill in the area. Let's try to work together. And Range refused to work with them in changing the ordinance at all. So that left them with no choice, which was to really go by what the residents were calling for, which was a 2,500 foot setback. Finally, after months and months, they did end up passing that 2,500 foot setback. They included new things in the ordinance, including language that discusses DBCs rather than just the DBAs. So we enacted a much stricter ordinance in November of 2024. It was passed. So that is something that taught me that, when you're something that's this important, we are suffering here. And to be quite frank, it's not going to help me at all because they can still drill more wells up here on the pad and I can't do anything about it because they're grandfathered in. So this was really just for anybody. So nobody else had to go through kind of what our family went through because it's hard and it's not fair and the air is bad. And an interesting item that I do want to add is that I mentioned briefly that when they first came to drill in 2020, they were going to do an air study up here. Range was going to do their own air study. And again, that's when they were using their green fleet. And when they came back the second time, they did not do an air study. But during the hearings for the new ordinance, it came out by they had an expert discussing that air study saying, the air is fine. Here's the study we did. It was a long-term air study, but it was found that the the methodology that they were using in their air study was not commonly accepted standards in the air monitoring industry. So under oath, the gentleman testified that, yeah, we didn't use what is the commonly accepted, meaning, to make it real short and sweet, the canisters of air should be checked every 24 hours, and they were waiting 6 days. So they were basically capturing something and letting it stay for days, where most of it would escape. So it's supposed to be checked every 24 hours. So they weren't following standard protocol, and then they were passing out this air study as if it was the greatest thing ever and trying to get other townships to believe it. To make a long story short, I found that because of my determination and I wouldn't give up with pushing for further setbacks in this township. And I really feel like this is just the first step. You know, we can do it as a township, but it's sort of the last, it's sort of like the last, what's the word I'm looking for? Like the last line of defense. You know, we should have these at a state level. So the reason our ordinance was so poor to begin with was because they use state standards. So now we updated our ordinance and we need to get the state to kind of follow us and follow our lead and update the states at the state level at this point. And that's about it. That's my story.
Thanks for sharing that, Michelle. It's very powerful and also inspiring to hear about all the work that's gone into this. And, you know, I'll pass it over shortly to Jillian to talk about the history of the campaign. But I will say, if anybody listening in tonight has questions, please feel free to drop it in the chat. Time permitting, we'll be having a discussion, answering questions at the end of the presentations.
Thank you, everybody.
All right. So thank you, Michelle, for your compelling story. And unfortunately, this is not a unique situation, right, that Michelle experienced. This is something that residents of Southwest PA experience every day. Here in Penn Township, our setback is 600 feet. They thought 100 was a little bit better than 500. So they said, well, we're going to go with 600. So, and even though we've been, you know, pushing Penn Township for the last 10 years to increase that setback to a health protective standard, our pleas have gone on deaf ears. And so one of the ways that, you know, back in 2019, when me and folks at Clean Air Council and others in this room were thinking about ways to that we could make it a little bit more protective for us living in the shale fields. What could we do? The first thing we thought about was, you know, let's form this coalition. Let's start working together because one voice is can be very powerful, as Michelle illustrated, but many voices is even more powerful. So let's form this coalition. So in 2019, state groups like Clean Air Council, grassroots groups like Protect PT got together and we started focusing on protective buffers. At the time, we knew that one of the best ways to be effective in protective setbacks were to focus on the local level ordinances, as Michelle illustrated. And so we started to look at, you know, how could we help, local governments institute protective ordinances? How could we educate them to ensure that they understood things that families like Michelle's and mine and Lois's and other people's are experiencing? So, this was a huge focus, and we had some really early successes. Here, actually, where I live in Trafford, I live on the line of Trafford and Penn Township. The well pads are in Penn Township. The Trafford is a really residential, even more residential area with very little places for development. And so we thought, you know what, though, there is a place right near the school. And that's not a great idea to have a well pad near an elementary school. And so why don't we make a very protective ordinance? So Trafford really early on, this is even before Protect PT was really up and running, enacted a very strong ordinance. And that's just one example. And you can see, actually, we were speaking in Harrisburg really early on. There's my son in this picture with his paper, trying to urge the governor and other people to institute larger setbacks around people's homes. And he's now 17. So this has been going on for a long time. Next slide, please. So in 2020, we had some movement. We thought, oh my gosh, somebody is listening to us. Josh Shapiro, the then Attorney General, brought together residents that had these experiences, and they testified for hours and hours and hours and days, talking about the impacts that they've had. And so that became the 43rd grand jury report on fracking. And we're going to follow up with an email and just let y'all know you'll get this presentation as a PDF. And these links are active links, so you can click on there and go right to the report yourself. But we were so excited because this was really validating to us who have been experiencing these things for years, sometimes at the time, decades. And so this really affirmed that, what we were saying, the people that lived in the shale fields, and what we already knew, that fracking was too close to homes, schools, and playgrounds. And this motivated us to work on a statewide level. So we asked 2 governors, we asked legislators, we asked the PADEP, and to this day, we have no action. And in fact, earlier this year was the 5th anniversary of that grand jury report in June. And folks from this coalition and others, we got together and we actually had a webinar. You can look at that on Protect PT's website and on our YouTube channel, but the link is right there because 5 years later, we're looking at no progress. And I remember when protective buffers started, and they were talking at the time, maybe we can get some progress in 2020, 2021. And I was thinking to myself at the time, this really makes me mad that it should take so long to make such an important move for so many people. And I said, why? Why does it have to take this long? And here we're over 5 years later, and we still have no progress. To me, that tells me that there are other people that have more power than us that are experiencing it do, and I don't think that's just. So I feel like we should keep working to institute these protective ordinances as well as protective buffers in the state. That's what's needed. So if you go to the next slide. In last October, we actually submitted our petition, and part of what I said in the Capitol was, we've been waiting too long. And we held a press conference in the Capitol. We made recommendations to the DEP, and the DEP actually recommended in April our petition for review to the Environmental Quality Board. We were there in the room, and I was very happy to hear the DEP describe the petition that folks from EIP and Clean Air Council put together, that this was a sophisticated legal argument. That gave me a lot of hope that this would move forward. However, the Environmental Quality Board, or EQB, voted to table our petition in that April, and we're still waiting for it to be untabled. We're actually going to be going to Harrisburg again on not quite the anniversary, but almost the anniversary of a year from the time that we submitted the petition. So if you're interested in coming with us on October 29th, get in touch. But we are going to be talking to folks at the Capitol, educating them about our petition, and we're hoping that it gets untabled and that it can start to move forward. And this is just a review to see if it will move forward. Yep, and that is what I have in my presentation, and I think I'm going to hand it back over to Alice.
Thanks, Jillian. I'm going to pass it over to Lisa Hallowell now to actually give you the presentation that she presented to the Environmental Quality Board back in April.
Thanks so much, Alice. Yeah, there's a lot of slides here, so you'll be hearing me say this, but we wanted to share with you all the presentation and the argument that we made before the board for why we think this petition is so important and why the time to act on it is now. So as Jillian just mentioned, we submitted the paper petition in October, and then in April was when we were able to, we were invited by the EQB to give a 5-minute presentation. So this was it. I modified it slightly for our purposes today, but this is pretty much it. So slide. This is the cover. You can go to the next slide. Thank you. This petition for rulemaking requests greater protective buffers from new, unconventional, or fracking sites to people's homes, drinking wells, waterways, hospitals, daycares, and schools. Since 2012, 42 independent peer-reviewed studies have shown that fracking at current setback distances has caused dangerous impacts to health and the environment due to releases of benzene and other fracking pollutants. This proposed regulation is narrowly drafted. It does not seek to ban fracking or relocate existing sites. It only applies to new, unconventional oil and gas wells and sets common sense, data-driven protective buffers. Slide. This is a screenshot taken through a bedroom window in Washington County, Pennsylvania. Imagine that this was your home. At its core, this petition is about the state ensuring that Pennsylvanians can feel safe in their homes and in this Commonwealth we share. Would you feel assured your health was protected here? Slide. For most Pennsylvanians, their home is the biggest investment they will make. EQB has a mandate to protect the safety and property rights of persons residing in areas where fracking occurs. You'll notice, you may recognize this from the earlier slides. Okay, slide, next slide. This is a daycare, approximately 1,046 feet from an unconventional well site. If you left your toddler here all day, every day, would you feel assured their health was protected? Slide. Nothing in the Oil and Gas Act states that the current setbacks are a maximum, and the PA Supreme Court has stated that Section 3215, which includes the current setbacks, permit agencies to go further. Industry's claim that this board lacks authority to act on this position is not supported by the laws. The Oil and Gas Act, the Clean Streams Law, and the Air Pollution Control Act give EQB the authority and mandate to promulgate regulations to protect health and the environment. The agency's duties under the Pennsylvania Constitution to protect and conserve Pennsylvania resources further bolster this authority. Slide. You may recognize this photograph as well from Michelle's earlier presentation. The setbacks requested are a common sense step to better protect Pennsylvanians. This petition recommends data-supported minimum setbacks from new fracking wells. And you can see the numbers there. I think I'll say them out loud just because we haven't done that yet. What we are asking for are setbacks of 3,281 feet from any building or drinking water well, which is 1 kilometer, 5,280 feet from the property boundary of any building serving vulnerable populations, which includes schools, daycares, and hospitals, and that's 1 mile, and 750 feet from any surface water of the Commonwealth, because there are no current setbacks required from surface waters, even though a lot of spills occur at sites like this. Slide. 42 independent peer-reviewed studies show serious health impacts at current setback distances. I urge you to read through our petition and attachment C of the petition for a summary of the health effects observed, as well as the studies themselves to understand the gravity of the harms caused by fracking at current setback distances. Slide. These harms that have been documented are vast, including infant mortality, respiratory and neurological ailments, and rare childhood cancers. Study after study show that the closer people and water wells are to fracking sites, the worse the documented harm has been. Next slide. And I know one of our later speakers will be talking a little bit more about the studies. The state relied upon DEP's Southwest short-term air studies in setting the current setbacks, but DEP itself has stated in legal filings that these studies did not analyze cancer risks, did not involve any public health officials, and only monitored for less than 1 week. Next slide. The DEP's air chief admitted that the studies were designed to serve as planning tools, not standards to protect public health. DEP also admitted the studies did not make a conclusion as to whether fracking emissions were safe or unsafe, and failed to analyze long-term effects, cumulative effects, or more than a few of the many fracking pollutants. Next slide. DEP's 2018 air studies were assessed by the Pennsylvania Department of Health, which further found that the data was insufficient for assessing emissions impacts. The monitoring locations did not capture downwind air quality data, and they omitted study of known fracking chemicals and did not have usable data. We submitted to the EQB a report by senior scientist Mark Glass of Downstream Strategies that analyzes the limitations of using DEP's air studies for long-term health assessments or statewide setback distances. This, in tandem with DEP's own admissions regarding the inappropriateness of using the earlier short-term air studies for public health decisions and industry's failure to show that the current setbacks are protective, show the need for EQB and DEP to rely on the recent peer-reviewed studies provided to set health-driven protective buffers. Next slide, please. The Marcellus Shale Coalition, right before we made this presentation, attempted to submit some documents to the EQB to try to debunk our peer-reviewed scientific studies. So I just wanted to say a quick word that, despite their submission, they didn't cite any studies, and they provided a link to that claims that there are other studies that demonstrate that there's little, if any, detrimental impact to public health from fracking near at the current setbacks. But the link they provided was broken. You can see that I took a screenshot of it here. There was no data there. There was no there. Once we located some of what we thought they might be talking about on the Marcellus Shale Coalition's website, we found unauthored blog posts that were being cited to as opposed to peer-reviewed studies, and other data and information that was riddled with shortcomings. For example, one study claiming to analyze potential exposures to a school did not put air monitoring stations downwind of the well pad or near the school. And the letter from the Marcellus Shale Coalition also did not identify a single discrete concern with any of the 42 studies we submitted with our petition. Next slide. I wanted to also mention that this rule will not stop fracking. Don't believe the false narrative that protective buffers would ban fracking. It would move new fracking sites outside of people's backyards and further away from water wells. Industry has been drilling. Actually, I think go to the next slide. Oh no, this is it too. That's fine. Industry has been drilling 5-mile laterals in practice. So requiring new fracking wells to be 1 kilometer from buildings, 750 feet from streams, or even 1 mile from schools and hospitals is well within their abilities and usual practices and will not infringe on their ability to reach the gas they seek to extract. Now, next slide, please. Also, this rule wouldn't apply to existing wells. Here's a map. It's a little hard to see. A map of permitted fracking wells in a portion of southwestern Pennsylvania. Just so that to drive that point home, this is how many wells that are already there that would not be affected by this petition. Next slide, please. Furthermore, Pennsylvanians want these common sense setbacks. We submitted a letter from 28 Pennsylvania health and environmental groups, and there are hundreds of thousands of Pennsylvania members supporting this petition. We also submitted petitions signed by over 2,500 Pennsylvanians demanding these protective buffers. And final slide, please. This petition for rulemaking meets all the requirements under the board's regulations for moving forward. 42 independent peer-reviewed scientific studies show that fracking at current setbacks harms Pennsylvanians. The board has a statutory mandate to protect health and the environment, and the time to act is now. Thank you. All right, so go to the next slide, please. So that was the gist of my presentation. I wanted to quickly, before I pass it to the next speaker, just talk for a minute about where our petition stands now. As Jillian mentioned before I spoke, we presented this in April. At that meeting, before I was even able to be questioned, our petition was put on the table, laid on the table, and did not move forward to a vote to determine whether the EQB wanted to have the DEP conduct further study of our petition. EQB then did not have another meeting until September. When they met in September, our petition was still, it didn't come up. It was not untabled. So what we recently did is this is breaking news probably for some of you. We just submitted an amended petition. It's identical to the original, but we added as attachments the citizens' signatures and the letter from the 28 groups that I mentioned a few slides ago that we submitted in April to the board. We submitted those as official attachments to the petition in the hopes that our petition will be an agenda item and it can move forward at the next meeting, which is tentatively scheduled for October 14th. So we don't know yet whether it's going to be an agenda item, but we are hopeful that it will come up and that they will vote yes. And, you know, I don't have a crystal ball. I know people are going to ask, you know, about that, but, you know, again, we are hopeful. Obviously, we think this is a common sense petition. It's really modest in what we're asking for, because as I'm sure many of the folks that are on the call know, you know, we could have asked for a lot greater distances. We could have asked for, you know, there's a lot of other infrastructure that are not included in this petition. So we think this is very reasonable, and we think it would, we're hoping it will move forward at the next meeting. And I think with that, I will turn it to the next speaker.
Thanks, Lisa. Yeah, I'll pass it on to Taylor now to talk about some of the health evidence.
Great, thanks, Alice, and thanks, Lisa, for walking us through how our recommendations really are based on an abundance, I can't emphasize enough, of evidence that living near fracking wells increases health risk. So I'm going to spend some time essentially stating the obvious that I think many of us know, but I think it's important to walk through the studies and the research that exists that supports setting this infrastructure back further from where we live, where we go to school, where we spend our time. So what does the science say? There are dozens of epidemiological studies and hundreds of other investigations that show that fracking is linked to negative health impacts. A lot of this research is validating the lived experiences that we've been hearing from community members since fracking began in the early 2000s. And the sort of piles and stacks of research studies that support this link have really started to come out in earnest in the last decade. The studies that I'm going to go through, some of them were focused on Pennsylvania in some cases, including 3 studies that were conducted by the Pennsylvania Department of Health and University of Pittsburgh. Those studies were released in 2023. But like I said, the science is clear. There are statistically significant correlations between proximity to fracking wells and negative health impacts. The associations are meaningful, and they send a resounding message that living near these wells will increase your risk of getting sick. The health effects are summarized here. They include respiratory and cardiovascular impacts like asthma or high blood pressure, birth impacts ranging from different birth defects, infant mortality, pregnancy complications, neurological impacts like chronic fatigue or migraines, dermal impacts such as rashes or even hair loss, mental health impacts. We heard a lot about this from Michelle, that the noise and light pollution from these facilities have significantly impacted people's stress levels, their sleep, and can also lead to depression. It's also associated with injuries from multi-vehicle truck accidents from the heavy truck traffic. There are impacts to reproductive health, including increased sexually transmitted infection rates, as well as fertility concerns, and then cancers and premature mortality. Next slide, please. So this is an overwhelming slide, but it's to show you that the evidence is overwhelming. As part of our process of determining our recommendations, we reviewed studies that analyze the connections between health and setback distances exclusively. The setback distances and associated health impacts from this subset of the studies are listed on this slide. So to be more clear about that, the research on this slide doesn't represent every study that was done on fracking and health. It's explicitly the studies that were done on distances and the health impacts associated with those. And even so, you see lots of health impacts that are associated with the distances that we include in our recommendations of 1 kilometer and 1 mile on the left side of this slide. And the map here shows the different distances listed on this slide from the Augustine well pad that we've been mentioning several times in this presentation. And you'll note that there are a lot of impacts connected to living within 1 kilometer of a fracking well. This research is what led to our recommendation of at least 1 kilometer from homes and drinking water wells. And this is a starting place because you see that there are health impacts up to greater distances, all the way up to 10 miles. And there are other studies that show that the pollutants themselves can travel even further. All this said, increasing setback distances from the current requirement of 500 feet will help. It will reduce risks of health impacts, especially those that are listed here underneath the 1 kilometer. Next slide. So one thing I did want to highlight here is the importance of thinking about cumulative impacts when talking about setback distances. And for those who maybe haven't heard that phrase before, that's referring to what the EPA says is the totality of exposures, the combinations of chemical and non-chemical stressors, and their effects on health, well-being, and quality of life outcomes. So what this means is that the impact of one facility on one person, on someone's health, cannot be accurately assessed without considering other things, like how many other sources of pollution are near their home. Are they vulnerable in certain ways, such as age, or do you have existing health conditions, as well as socioeconomic stressors like poverty? Cumulative impact assessments also acknowledge that impacts are determined over time. Environmental exposures or social stressors from the past can affect someone's susceptibility to air pollution in the present. Exposure to pollution, even at low levels over long periods of time, can also trigger significant health issues in the future. Every person's past, present, and future exposures add layers to the cumulative health burden that they carry. Next slide. So for example, this is that same map from the Augustine well pad where we know there are lots of homes near the well pad itself, which is the blue dot on this map. And that exposure isn't just to the Augustine well pad. There are 54 other well pads and a total of 269 individual wells within a 10-mile radius of that area. So it's really important that we consider other facilities, other stressors when thinking about the cumulative impact that this may have on someone's health or well-being. And overall, the closer you are to a well, the greater risk of health harms. And so the value of increasing these setbacks distances will reduce the number of wells that are in close proximity, that highest risk zone, from a home, and that will overall lower the cumulative burden on communities and individual families. With that, I'll pass it to the next speaker.
Thank you, Taylor. Next, we have Lois, who will be sharing her resident story. Take it away, Lois.
So happy everybody is here. So I just wanted to share a little bit about myself and doing this work. We moved back to Washington County. I can't believe it's been 20 years ago. And at the time we had 2 small boys, and then our family grew to 3 boys and a daughter. So my children were raised in the shale fields. And we started to notice things that were happening within with my children, and just what was going on around my home. And my children experienced all types of health impacts, from rashes, bloody noses, all over body rashes, even on like my son's ears and things, just clear down to his toes. All 4 of my children have had Lyme's disease, that, maybe can't be traced directly back to the oil and gas industry, but the oil and gas industry does warm the climate with its emissions. And so therefore there's an increase of tick population. But one of the things that I wanted to do when I went, first began this work, when I would go to Harrisburg or DC, I would sit with legislators and, I could show them photos, and my children would go, and, Jillian's been there with me a number of times with her children as well. And we could tell stories, but I really thought they really need to see this. And I would say things like, you need to come to my house. And they would sort of, laugh very politely. And I would say, no, I'm serious. You need to come to my house. So that's really where, the beginning of Frackland Tours happened, was to give people a firsthand account of what it is like to live and grow up in the shale fields in southwestern Pennsylvania. So I've been fortunate enough to host a ton of people on these tours, from legislators to reporters to different organizations with new employees that want to get an idea of what, they're working on. So one of the other things that I did was document people's stories, because I felt that it was very important, because a lot of the people that I work with are sick. Some of them have died, and are currently not doing very well. So the slides that I'm going to show you are different people's homes in different areas of Washington County. So the first slide that you're seeing is a well pad called the Big Daddy Shaw Pad. So this is the second largest producing well, or was, in Washington County, Pennsylvania. And you can see the house there. So that's probably roughly 1,000 feet or so, maybe a little less. And the people that own this house, actually, the wife was my mail carrier, so I knew her personally. And the father was a retired coal miner, and he thought this was going to be his legacy. So after the well pad coming in, and EQT was just fabulous with the landowner, and we give them gravel and sort of things like that, that we know a lot of the gravel that they give to communities and things have had spills on them with radioactive residual waste and things like that. So what happened with this family was their father died of a rare cancer. They actually found a lump under his armpit, and it was a salivary gland cancer that Johns Hopkins had no idea what to do with. And a month later, unfortunately, their mother died of a heart attack and dementia. Next slide, please. So this well pad that you're looking at is the Reeb pad. In the previous slide that you saw, there were 3 siblings. So one of the siblings lived in my area and decided that they wanted to move to sort of get away from fracking. And that was her parents' well, the Big Daddy Shaw Pad. So this is the Reeb pad. This is in Fallowfield Township in Charleroi. Some of you have heard Charleroi on the news in the previous months with our current president remarking about Charleroi. So this is around that area, just to give you an idea. So this pad, if you look around, and you can see the train trestle there in the lower left-hand corner, and the homes to the right and behind it, and on, all around it are all these homes. So the owner of the Big Daddy Shaw Pad moved to this beautiful neighborhood to get away from fracking, and woke up one day and thought, oh, they must be building a new house. And so this well pad you can walk to from her house. And she has 5 acres in this community. It's a very beautiful community, very well maintained. And there's a well pad with an open pit impoundment, in-ground impoundment that holds fresh water, where trucks come and take the water out and drive away in this lovely neighborhood where she thought she could escape fracking. Next slide, please. This again is a view of the Reeb pad, and you can see the home that is the closest to that. That is the owners of the well pad. This pad is not fenced in at all. I've actually walked directly on it, and you can see the swing set to the right. Next slide, please. So this is the Twilight Compressor Station. This is in West Pike Run Township. In West Pike Run Township, there's the Twilight Compressor Station, the Full Moon and Blue Moon Compressor Station, and the Lusk Pad. So this is looks like a very beautiful country, or is a very beautiful country scene. So, but it is inundated with well pads, as you can see how close they come to the farmers' fields and the crops. Next slide, please. And this is a view of the Full Moon and Blue Moon Compressor Station. And you can see the home down in the far right corner there. And then there's also a home very close to the compressor station in the top left corner. So this was the owner's property's ancestral home where she was born and raised. And her brother died of a rare cancer when the compressor station came in. And then they currently still live in the home to the bottom right of the picture. And if you notice around the compressor station, you'll see a green wall, a green sound wall. So you can see how it's covering the people to the far top sort of left, and then to the right that's supposed to keep the people that now live in the ancestral home and the current home protected. But you can also see these gaping holes there, right? So with these sound walls, everything is funneled directly to the resident's home. And the gentleman of the house developed throat cancer and never smoked in his life. And, once the compressor station came in, when they were asked by the owners of the compressor station, or they asked the owners of the compressor station, which is EQT, if they could just simply be bought out so they could move, they were told that they didn't have enough money to go into litigation with them. Next slide, please. Now, this is the Lusk Pad. So you just saw the Full Moon and Blue Moon Compressor Station, and you saw the Twilight Compressor Station. So directly up the hill from those compressor stations is the Lusk Pad. Now, this pad looks like nothing. It's in production, and so you don't see all of the apparatuses and things on it. But I want you to look at the house, and I want you to look at the road going from the well pad directly to the house. So this family has 2 children. Their first son was born prior to the well pad, and their second son was born during the construction and the fracking of the well pad. Now, I want you to also, before I go any further, look at the small, tiny country road that giant triaxle trucks were on. Giant triaxle trucks going up and down these roads. So their second son, I believe he is 10 now. He has absolutely no cognitive skills. So he can't walk, he can't talk. He wears a diaper, and he is pushed around in a stroller still. That happened after or during the process of the building of the pad and the fracking. They used to have to put sheets and things up on their window to cut down on the light, and the amount of dust was unbelievable. And so everything from the well pad rolls directly into their driveway and down into their yard. Numerous animals have died. Next slide, please. So this is a funny photo. This is a construction of an above ground impoundment. So there's a little background to this story. The woman whose well pad, where the road to the well pad is for this property, she doesn't own this well pad, but the access road to the well pad is her property, so the pad is named after her. So she is an older woman, and she said, well, they just told me that they were doing some welding all night long for about a week. So I was there one day, and I came around, and this is on the manifold pad. So this is where a lot of the equipment and everything is stored. And I saw this and thought, what's going on? And let me show me the next slide, please. So the reason that was being built was, you can see that this above ground impoundment was leaking everywhere. And they told her that they were just welding a few things. And because she was elderly, she didn't walk down there to take a look. And you can see where they sprayed the green grass. I always like that, the green grass theory, everything is fine, along the side. And you can actually see the water in the top left part of the picture. And you can also see all of the hoses where the trucks would come and hook up to and spill into that above ground impoundment. Next slide, please. This is also what a well pad looks like when it's busy, as I like to call it, and it isn't, that flat surface that you saw on the previous slide. This is just an idea of how many trucks. You can see the trucks lining up to that impoundment, even after it is, quote, been taken care of, even they were soldering a new impoundment, and you can see the black pipe that is going down into the ground from the impoundment, and the sand cans and the trucks and the trailers. And these trucks are on all these backcountry roads as well. Next slide, please. And so this is, you've seen this in Lisa Hallowell's production that she showed. This is literally behind a daycare center on Route 19. It's called World of Wonder Daycare. So that's an above ground impoundment with a well pad directly behind this daycare center. Next slide, please. And this again is the photo that you saw with Lisa. Next slide. And this is a well pad. This is a range resource well pad that is located around like 519 sort of area that we came upon one day, and sort of Michelle's area, but a little bit further away. So I just wanted to show you could see what an actual rig looks like that you see people talk about all the time. Next slide, please. And so this is right by my house. This is down the road. We were at a great local tavern one day. That's okay, Alice. And I said, oh my gosh, there's a well pad. So I drove to this well pad. This is called the Three Musketeers well pad. It was an older pad, and they waited an awful long time to frack it. So this is one of the homes by it. And then if Alice, you could show the next slide, that would be great. And this is the closest home to it. So you can see, I don't know, I'm terrible at measuring. To me, that's like 200 feet away from a well pad. Next slide, please. Was it blank? Oh, sorry. This is a video, and this is by Michelle's house. This is the neighborhood by her home. My son did this drone footage for me. Just so you can see, there's a retirement community there. There's tons of young families living there. And this is on one side of the well pad that you can see. It's about a football field away. And then there is the well pad that's by Michelle's house as well. And you can see how massive this well pad is. I believe it's a 17 Warhol well pad. Michelle will have to correct me if I'm wrong, but it is giant. And you can go to the next one too, because I just wanted to show that as well. And this is the view from the other side. So you can see the neighborhood, and then you'll see the other side of it, which is by Michelle's house, how close her home is. Even though she showed that this is a great aerial, well, not a great aerial view, but a view of how close she is to this. So there's Michelle's home. And then this is the rest of her family's home over here. Okay, you can press pause. So again, how close is too close? We know that when something harms you, the further you get away from it, the better off you are. So, we're asking again, our governor, who agreed when he was Attorney General to push this stuff further away from people. So we're asking that again, it be pushed further away from people. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. And next up.
Thank you, Lois. And thanks everyone for, sticking with us. I'm going to pass it on to our last presenter here, Lisa Graves Marcucci, who will talk a bit about how you can get involved.
Thank you. And thank you to all of our presenters and our team that has been doing this work for years, and especially the families that are really working hard to get the protections that they need. So now it comes to us. What can we do? And it really does come down to us. Governor Shapiro will have the final say on this, whether our petition moves forward and whether our petition is promulgated into a final rule that would add this added buffer layer to the minimum setback distances for all Pennsylvanians. And remember, we're only asking at this point for the EQB to allow the Pennsylvania DEP to fully investigate our petition. That's it. That's what a yes vote on hopefully October 14th would be, just to let the DEP further investigate our petition. Then from there would come the opportunity for public comments. There would be public hearings. There would be additional opportunities for all sides of the issue to be heard. But we really need the governor and the EQB to vote yes to allow the DEP to let this petition move forward. So we are asking everybody, not just you, but your family, your friends, your neighbors. If you're part of a coalition, please share this information. You'll be getting a follow-up email, and there'll be some PDFs attached. One of them is going to be all of these slides combined, so you can share this with your networks, and we really hope you will. But we want to text the governor. That's the number. He put it out on TikTok. He'd like to hear from you virtually. Please do. Email the governor. You can go to the link and put in an email letter right there. We've made it easy. We have a postcard campaign. Some of you are participating in the actual hard copies of the postcards, and we thank you for that. We're going to be asking those all be mailed back to me by the middle of October, because we want to take those to Harrisburg on October 29th and hand deliver over 1,000 postcards, we hope, to Governor Shapiro's office. This is a link at the bottom here to the virtual postcard. We invite you to also sign that or share that with your networks. We just need to show the governor that Pennsylvanians want this minimum setback distance increased. Next slide. If you say, what do I say to the governor? Here's a sample message. And again, you're going to be getting this in a PDF, so you can use this to refer to whether you're calling or texting or emailing the governor. Or if you do want to join us on October 29th, when we have our event in Harrisburg, we're going to be visiting legislative offices. Print it out, bring it with you. You can talk to the governor's team. You can talk with legislators. We just need to raise the awareness of everybody in Harrisburg that this is something that Pennsylvanians have been waiting for, long overdue, and we need action now. Next slide. We also need you to show up and stay involved. We really are grateful that new people have joined the conversation tonight, that maybe you'll join our coalition, because we have the next steps coming pretty quickly that we're going to be doing. We're going to be attending either virtually or in person the October 14th EQB meeting, and we will be providing follow-up information on that. And also, we'd encourage as many people as possible to please join us on our day of action on October 29th. We want to get our voices heard. We want to keep the drumbeat going. And the next slide. If you want to stay in touch with what the campaign is doing, this is the link to the Protective Buffers campaign. Everything is on there. There's a tab for the petition. There's a tab for actions. There's information that you heard Lisa share tonight. All of the documents that she shared to EQB are now on that website. Everything is in that one place. But of course, you can email us if you have additional questions. And you can also watch for updates from us. We're going to be sending you emails, that thank you email that you'll probably get tonight or tomorrow after attending, as well as the PDFs with all of this information encapsulated. And again, I just want to thank again the families in particular who've shared their very heartfelt and very poignant stories about what they've lived through. And like you heard Michelle say, this isn't going to change anything for her, unfortunately, but it might help the next community, or it might help elected officials. And I hope there were elected officials who joined us tonight to understand that this is a common sense approach, that if elected officials feel moved by this, please join us in asking the governor to do this. It would make it easier for local government then to understand this is now the new minimum, and it would help bring added protections to local government's frontline defense of their communities as well. But the bottom line is, together our voices matter, and we're increasing our voice power and our boots on the ground, spreading the information with our other community members, our advocacy teams, and hopefully in Harrisburg in October. So thank you all for joining, and we really appreciate you being here and hope you'll stick with us and remain part of our coalition. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. I recognize we are well past 8 o'clock now, and appreciate everyone for hanging on. At this time, we have some time for questions. If folks have questions they would like to ask, I'm sure we can stay on for maybe a couple minutes longer. I'll say there are some questions in the chat that have been addressed in the chat, And we'll be sure to send along the text of those answers in our follow-up email too. So yeah, at this time, if you have any additional questions you'd like to ask any of the presenters, feel free to unmute, speak up, or drop it in the chat. All right.
Hey, Alice, I just want to say that I put the PDF that Lisa is shared with all of us. I just uploaded that, and so I can share that as well. So check your email and get that out to you.
Thank you. All right, I'm not seeing anyone else unmute. I'm sure we'll follow up with contact information if questions do come up in the future, but really appreciate you all for tuning in tonight. Great, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you.
so
Hey, I
much.
want to copy that picture.
Interesting.
It's a great picture. I want a copy.